This is the 2021 Ford F-150, and it's Ford's most popular selling pickup truck. Now, the configuration in behind me is the Super Crew, and it's got the 5.5-foot box, but there are a number of different configuration options available for this pickup truck. We've got the Super Crew, which is the full 4-door, the Super Cab, which is the 2 full-door and the 2 half-doors, and then the regular cab, which is just a 2-door. Different box sizes, and we have a number of different engine choices available. The one in behind me that I'm reviewing for you today is powered by the 5-liter V8, so the naturally aspirated engine. I'm excited to share it with you today, but before I do, I want to give a huge shout out and a thank you to Formula Lincoln for giving me access to this vehicle to shoot the video for you today. Check down in the description because I've got a link off to their website as well. If you enjoy the content, give it a thumbs up, think about sharing it with your social networks, but let's dive into it and figure out everything that we need to know about the 2021 F-150 XLT. Now, looking at some basic vehicle styling on the outside, this is the XLT Sport Appearance Package, which means we have no chrome on the outside of the vehicle. It's body color all throughout. We've got a nice black grille along the front there as well. Now, on top of that, looking at the headlamps, we got LED headlamps there. We've got our fog lamps underneath and a few hooks along the front as well. So styling-wise, if you're not a fan of chrome, look at the XLT Sport Package because it's going to give you that body color paint. But on top of that, we're going to get a console. So we're going to get dual captain's chairs in the front row with a console in the middle, which means that our shifter is going to go from the steering wheel onto our hand instead. It's powered so we can move that up and down as well. And there is the option for the interior work surface area, which is exciting. We're going to get to that one in just a little bit. But I love the styling of it. The 21 F-150 did get a little bit of an upgrade on the outside, but the inside is where it's really got its gold this year. So huge upgrades. We're going to touch base on the interior in just a second. Let's cover off a few things on the wheels as well. Because we're in the sport package of the vehicle, we're going to have an 18-inch tire standard. Goes from a chrome style wheel into this darker metallic alloy instead. Now, 18-inch tires are going to be standard inside of the sport pack of the 302 version of the vehicle. Now, on top of that, we do have options between 17-inch, we can go up to 20-inch tires plus, depending on the options of the vehicle trim level that we're looking at. So 18-inch tires are going to be standard inside of the XLT when we get the 302a version of the vehicle. And we've got a few different options when it comes down to the rubber. So we can either look at an all-terrain tire or we can look at an all-season tire. So we have a few different options that are available. Nicely laid out there as well. Now, when it comes down to the actual drivetrain of the vehicle, it is available either as a rear-wheel drive, so a 4x2, or you can get it in the 4x4. Now, because we're in the XLT version of the vehicle, we've got our 2 high, 4 high, and 4 low. If we were to look at the Lariat and above, that would give us the 4 auto setting instead. Now, a few other things to highlight on the outside. Because we are in the 302 version of the vehicle, we do have running boards. When we get the Sport Pack, it's going to be this black running board that we're looking at. When we don't get the Sport Pack, it's going to be a chrome running board along the side instead, but looks really sharp. Let's actually hop inside for 1 second so I can show you the seats. So as you can see there, we've got that dual captain's chairs with the console in the middle, and then we've got that power folding shifter in the middle. Right, now, taking a peek underneath the hood of this vehicle, so this is the 5-liter V8, so the naturally aspirated engine. Looking at the F-150, it does have 6 available engine choices. We've got the 3.3-liter V6, which is going to push out 290 horsepower and 265 pound-feet of torque. The 2.7-liter EcoBoost, which is going to push out 325 horsepower and 400 pound-feet of torque. The 3-liter turbo diesel, which is going to push out 250 horsepower and 440 pound-feet of torque. The 5-liter V8, which we're looking at, that's going to push out 400 horsepower and 410 pound-feet of torque. And then we've got the 3.5-liter EcoBoost, which is going to push out 400 horsepower, 500 pound-feet of torque. And then lastly, we've also got the Power Boost engine, which is new for the 2021 model year, and that's going to give us 430 horsepower and 570 pound-feet of torque. So as you can see, we've got a ton of different options when it comes down to the engine configuration. Which one you go with is ultimately going to depend on what you need inside of the vehicle. So more power, more towing capacity, etc., you're going to want to look at the 3.5-liter EcoBoost engine. If you hate the idea of a turbocharged engine, you've got Old Faithful, the 5-liter V8, which is, depending on how you have it configured, you're going to be able to pull up to 13,000 pounds. Now, taking a peek under the hood, we've got easy access if we ever need to fill up our windshield wiper fluid. We've got easy access to the battery, to a number of other fluids as well, and then we can easily, well, not quite as easily, but we can kind of check our oil just along the very top as well. Looking at some standard technology inside of the vehicle, so this is the 302a version of the vehicle, so we've got our backup camera. We've also got the trailer tow package. Now that's going to come standard in the 302 and it is optional. You don't need to get the full trailer tow package. You could just look at getting the receiver itself instead if you're just going to be towing something light. Because we're in the 302 version, we also do have our reverse sensing system, and that's going to come standard. On top of that, the running boards are going to be a part of that 302a package. We've also got our blind spot system, so lets us know if anybody's entered the blind spot on either side of the vehicle, and that's going to be standard on some trim levels of the vehicle. And we also have our lane keeping system as part of the driver assistance package. Now, one of the other things to point out, we do have the option for that 360 camera as well. This one doesn't have it, but if it did, it would put another camera underneath both side view mirrors, and then we would also have a front-facing camera there as well, and that's going to give us a full 360 view of the vehicle as we drive. Towing capacity inside of the F-150 is going to vary widely. It's going to depend on the type of vehicle that you have, your configuration, so whether you're at the Super Crew, the Super Cab, or the regular cab, it's going to depend on your box length and the engine that you've got underneath the hood as well. Minimum, you're looking at around 7,000 pound towing capacity, and it's going to max out around 14,000 pounds with the max trailer tow package when you look at the 4x2 drivetrain with the 3.5 liter EcoBoost engine. There are a ton of different options that are available. Check down in the description below because I've put together a comprehensive video that talks about all the differences between the engines and the different towing capacities, payload capacities, and things like that. Now, a couple things to note about the towing and payload capacity in general. Whatever you have inside of the truck, people, cargo, things like that, that's going to subtract away from what you can tow. So if you need to pull, let's say 10,000 pounds, you're going to need to look at a vehicle with that max trailer tow package in order to be able to make sure you're not going to be pulling too much when you take that towing into account as well as payload inside of the vehicle. Looking at the box size of the vehicle, we have a few different options that are available. When we get into the Super Crew that we're looking at, we've either got a 5.5 or 6.5 foot box that's available. You get into the Super Cab, you can go up to an 8 foot box. The regular cab, you can get that 8 foot box as well. So what configuration you go with is going to depend on what you ultimately need to do with the vehicle. But taking a look, we've got the 5.5 foot box. In order to be able to lower the tailgate, we can do it on the key fob. So if we take a peek, we can double press on the key fob in order to lower it. There also is a button along the top there as well. So nice slow release, and then we're just going to manually lift it back up. Now, a couple other things to take into account. This vehicle behind me does not have the tailgate step, but that is available as an option. So depending on how often you get in and out of the back of the truck, you might want to look at that option because it's going to give us a little step in order to be able to hop inside of the truck easily. Now, having said that, I'm 6 feet tall, so I can easily get in and out. So if you're a little bit shorter, you may want to look at that tailgate step as an option. And for a few $100, not only is it going to be more effective to get in and out of the vehicle, but it also will help the resale value as well. As we take a look along the back, so we do have a few clamps if we need to cut some wood as we go. As I mentioned, this one doesn't have the tailgate step, but if we take a look over at this one, so just along the top there, as you can see, this one does. So all we do is push the button out in order to extend it to get into that bed a little bit easier. But taking a look, because we're in the 302 version of the vehicle, we do have our tie downs. So those are going to be standard across the F-150 lineup. In the 302a package, we also do have some additional cleats that we can add in. So we've got 4 cleats along the side there to give us a total of 8 tie downs. Now, one thing that will be standard inside of the vehicle as well, we do have our box lighting, so our LED bed lighting. And then we also do have a tiny little inverter in the back as well. We can also upgrade that to a 2 kilowatt hour if we wanted to. And then when we get inside of the Power Boost version of the vehicle, so that 3.5 liter hybrid, it's going to give us the option for up to a 7.2 kilowatt hour battery, which means we could literally power an arc welder off of this thing. Now the box dimensions are showing up, so as you can see there, we've got a 5.5 foot box, which is essentially going to end right here. So as we have this lifted up, we've got a 5.5 foot box dimension. Now with the bed fully extended down, we get an extra foot and change. There is the option for an aftermarket accessory where we can get a bed extender. So depending on which version of the truck you go for, if you have to sacrifice and get one of the shorter boxes right now, just knowing that you can extend the box out by getting that box extender if you needed to, you can always have this tailgate down as well in order to give you a little bit of extra space. So if you're carrying 2x4s, extra wood, things like that. Filling up fuel inside of the F-150 is a very straightforward process. Just along our driver's side door, we've got a little fuel cap, and it's a capless system. So all you're gonna do is just insert your fuel hose, close it, lock it back up, and you're set to go. Now, when you look at the Power Boost version of the vehicle, so when you get into that hybrid, the gas cap is actually locking. It's not going to be locking in anything but the Power Boost version of the vehicle. Now, if you're concerned with fuel theft and things like that, there are some aftermarket options if you want to get a cap with a lock on it instead. And then when it comes down to the fuel quality that you want to use, just your regular 87 gas. So regular 87 octane is the minimum manufacturer's recommendation combination. Now, having said that, when you get into the turbocharged engine, so the 2.7 and the 3.5, I do recommend a higher quality fuel. That's just going to help things under the hood burn a little bit better. Now, on top of that, typically with the turbocharged engine, you're going to want to care for it a little bit more meticulously than the regular naturally aspirated engines. So you're going to want to change out spark plugs and things like that a little bit more frequently as well. Taking a peek at the key fob. So along the very top, we've got our unlock and our lock button, our remote start, our tailgate release, as well as our horn or a panic alarm button. On top of that, we also do have our emergency access key, so if we ever need to get access to the vehicle because either the fob or the vehicle has died, we can easily do that. Now, one other thing to point out, when we look at the partition lockable storage, that emergency access key is going to give us the ability to unlock that as well. So it'll just be along the driver's or passenger side. And on top of that, this emergency access key is also going to be the key that we need to use if we ever need to get our spare tire. So what we would do is just unlock, and then just underneath we can see we've got the mini spare tire as well. So definitely useful. All we need to do is just plug in. Now, that emergency access key, if we get the storage ramp, so the loadable storage ramps directly from the factory, the lock is actually going to be cut to fit this as well. So rather than having multiple keys, we can just use this emergency access key to not only get access to that mini spare tire, but also to unlock the loading ramps as well. In order to see how the loading ramps work, check down in the description below because I put together a comprehensive video on that. In order to be able to remote start the vehicle, we do have the option of doing it through the key fob, but we can also use the FordPass app either on iPhone or Android devices. When we're remote starting from the key fob, all we're going to do is press the lock button once and the circle button twice, and that remote starts the truck. In order to cancel the remote start, we're just going to press that circle button once and it cancels the remote start for us. Looking at second row spacing inside of the F-150. So I'm 6 feet tall. I've got a couple inches of head space. Now, one thing to note, the vehicle that we're looking at does not have the sunroof, so that panoramic roof. If you got one with the roof, you're gonna lose about an inch of head space as well. So something to take into account, I've literally got probably about 3.5 inches of head space up overhead. So if you've got some taller people, they can definitely sit here. If they're taller, you may need to get them to sit in one of the front seats instead. But tons of space in the back. Now, one of the nice things about the F-150 is that we can also fold these seats up. So we can crank this lever and we can lift that up, and as you can see there, we've got a little bit of storage underneath this seat. So it's a 60-40 split, 60% driver, 40% passenger, a little bit of storage space. Now, there is an aftermarket accessory that was introduced this year, and that's that partition lockable storage. So what it'll do is it'll essentially extend the storage out, and if you're not using it, you can simply fold it down. But one of the nice things is that there also is, you can use the key in order to be able to lock this thing up as well. So definitely useful. We can click that in order to lock it back down into place as well. Then you do have the ability to open up either side, so we can lift both of these sides up if we needed to. When we get into that passenger side though, it is going to be a power inverter that's going to be included in the back there. Now, looking at some second row features, so along the driver and the passenger seats, we do have our pockets in the back if we need to store a few things. Moving down along the console, because this is the XLT Sport Pack, we've got the console instead of the bench seat, but we do have a traditional cigarette lighter adapter there. Moving down a little bit, so as you can see, we also do have a few USB ports, so our USB and our USB-C, as well as a built-in inverter. So we've got the ability to plug in a traditional wall outlet in the back of the vehicle if we need to. Now, this is the XLT trim level of the vehicle, so we're not going to have heated seats at all. If you want the heated second row seats, you're going to have to be in the Lariat or above. Take a look in the description below because I've done a full walk-around video of the Lariat that you can check out as well. Now, a few other things to point out. As we start to move up overhead, we've got a few hooks on both sides, and then we've also got our cabin control lighting for the back seat. Now, one more thing to point out at the back of the F-150, as you can see there, we've got a little tab along the side in the passenger seat. We can just crank that in order to lift this forward, and as you can see there, we do have our jack along the back as well as our spigot. So we would use that if we ever need to use a jerry can in order to fill up the vehicle. So we insert that into the capless system first, jerry can after that, and Bob's your uncle. Now, taking a peek on the inside. So, a few things to point out. We do have a little bit of a different look for the 2021 model year. We've got our unlock and our lock buttons on the top. We've got the ability to control what's going on with our side view mirrors, and then we've got our window control buttons. Now, this specific F-150 does have the upgraded B&O sound system, so the Bang & Olufsen sound system, which does sound very nice. Now, that's not to say the regular one doesn't sound nice, but this B&O system just kind of takes it to the next level. We've got a Lotto pocket along the door. That's going to be the same for the driver and the passenger side, and then a little bit of storage a little bit further down as well. Looking just to the left-hand side of the steering wheel, so a few things to point out. We've got our light controls. So those are going to be for the exterior lighting, so the proximity lighting on the outside of the vehicle. We can turn on the left or the right mirror. We can also lower our tailgate from inside the vehicle as well. Moving down, we've got our bed lighting, so we can toggle that bed lighting on or off. We've got the button for our fog lamps, and we can figure out what's going on with our running lamps. Honestly, the only settings I really recommend that you should worry yourself with, the very top and then that other one, so that A button, the auto setting, because that's going to flip us between the daytime or the nighttime running lamps, depending on how bright it is outside. On top of that, we've got our dimmer switches, which are going to make the instrument cluster darker or brighter. We've got our parking brake, as well as power adjustable pedals. Now the pedals themselves, they are adjustable, and this is an add-on option as well, and that has to be done at the time of ordering from the factory. Moving down a little bit more, we've got our hood release latch, and then just up above, we can kind of make it out, we've got our OBD2 reader. So if we ever need to do an ECU tune and things like that, that's where we're gonna go in order to make that happen. Looking at seating inside of the F-150, we're in the XLT version of the vehicle, which means that we've got a cloth seat. Now that's going to be the same for the XLT and the XL version of the vehicle. You could technically do an aftermarket cat skin solution in order to be able to get those leather seats in the front, but one thing to note about that, even if you're looking at that cat skin option, you're still going to only have heated seats in the front row. You need to jump into the Lariat or above to get the ventilated seats also. Now because we're in the 302 version of the vehicle, we've got power driver and power passenger seats on top of them being heated. So along our left-hand side, we've got a series of toggles. The very first one is going to allow the seat to go forwards or backwards. We can lift the whole seat up if we're a little vertically challenged, or if you're taller, you can lower the whole seat down. Now I'm 6 feet tall. With the seat all the way down, I've got like 6 inches of headspace up overhead. So if you're taller, just knowing that you can absolutely fit inside of this thing. Now on top of that, we can bring the seat back even more. We can power push those pedals forward, and we can also move that backrest backwards and forwards using that little toggle in the middle. So moving it all the way backwards, realistically, like if you're 6'6", 6'8", you could probably comfortably fit inside of this vehicle. Now there is another little button in the middle, and that's going to be for our power lumbar support, so we can give ourselves a little bit of extra stability in our lower back if we need it. Now, depending on the trim level of the vehicle you're looking at, we're in the XLT, which means that we've got a manually adjusting steering wheel. So by your left knee, there's a little lever. We're just gonna crank that down, and it's a telescopic wheel. So we can go in and out with it. We can go up and down. Once you've got that perfect position for you, you're just gonna take that lever, click it up in order to lock it back into place. Next up, taking a peek at the steering wheel. So a few things to point out. First and foremost, now this specific vehicle does not have the adaptive cruise control system in it. We do have that as an option though. We've got our basic cruise, our set it, we've got the cancel button, and then also our lane keeping button. So we can turn the lane keeping system on or off. We know that it's on because it lets us know that it's on, but we've also got that little card that shows up as well. So really, really nice. Now the system itself actually isn't going to be activated until you hit about 60 kilometers an hour. It's gonna go green once it turns on. Now if you start to veer over into a lane without signaling, the lane that you start to pull over to is going to go yellow. If it goes red, then it's either going to recenter you and kind of pull you back into your lane a bit, or it's going to give you a little bit of a steering wheel shake, almost as if you're running over rumble pavement. Moving down, we've got our minus and our plus buttons to either increase or decrease the volume, and our voice control button as well. Now the voice control button is going to give us a few different options. We can change the radio station, we can make phone calls, and with the factory navigation, we can also navigate using our voice instead. Now if we were set up either through Android Auto or Apple CarPlay, we'd also be able to use this either for our Siri Assistant or for the Google Assistant instead, which is kind of nice. Along the right-hand side, this is going to be the configuration buttons for that middle instrument cluster screen. So we can go up and down with it, and we've got a few different options that are available as well. So let's kind of dive into it a little bit. Now this is going to be our basic back button, this is going to be the basic menu button, our up and down, and then the OK. So let's move up and down and go through a few different things. We can configure the view if we want to change some things out and add a few different screens in. So we've got our trip 1 and 2, we've got our seatbelt, our off-road and our power distribution as well. So as you can see there, we've got the 2 back seatbelts that are plugged in. My seatbelt currently isn't on right now though. So it lets us know kind of what's going on with active seatbelts to make sure people either in the back are actually plugged in from a seatbelt perspective. And then moving back from there, and we've got a few different options. So we've got our trip fuel, our basic truck info. So let's kind of hop through some of these ones. We've got our tire pressure, off-road, power distribution. We've got some basic for the engine as well. So our oil life and our engine hours. Moving back, we've also got our seatbelt. So back to that seatbelt button again, and then we can just go back again, moving into our towing section. So we've got our trailer information, our towing status as well. Though I'm not towing anything, so that's kind of irrelevant at this point. Moving back, we've got our navigation, so we can take a look at our home address, we can look at previous destinations, favorites, our point of interest icons as well. Our phone, we do have the ability to go through Android Auto or Apple CarPlay, which is really, really nice. And that's wireless for the 2021 model year when we get into this new Sync 4 system. We can also connect both phones over Android or over Bluetooth as well, which means that we can set up Android Auto, Apple CarPlay strictly for phone calls. We can use our factory navigation, or we can use Google Maps, Apple Maps, or Waze directly at that middle screen, which is kind of nice. But with our phone connected, our phone would show up there. Phone's currently not connected. As we start to move down, we've got our audio settings. So audio's turned off. If we turn it on, we've got the ability to change between different stations. So if we look at our audio, we can change between AM, FM, Sirius XM. If my phone was connected, it would show up. If I had a USB stick with MP3s on it, that would show up as an available audio source as well. Moving down, we've got some basic settings. So again, configure our gauges. We can show our speed and miles per hour, kilometers per hour, etc. Border crossing, so as we get closer to the border, it'll let us know. Then we've also got our My View, our trip fuel counter, some basic truck info, and a few other things as well. And then just pressing the back button or our trip and fuel in order to go back to that basic view again. So we look at our auto start stop. That's going to be that start stop configurator. We've got what station's currently playing, our fuel economy, our current trip counters, and a number of other things. Now we can easily reset the trip counter by simply pressing the OK button on the steering wheel. So pressing and hold that for a second will default us back to that 0 again. And we've got some nice gauges, digital gauges along the top as well. Moving down a little bit more, we can either answer or hang up on a phone call, or we can either change songs or radio stations. And that's going to be the basics of the instrument cluster and the steering wheel. And as we start to move in a little bit, so looking along the left stick, just along the very tip, we can adjust what's going on with our windshield wiper fluid, so we can turn that on. And we can also adjust the speed by moving this stick as well. Now as we move off to the right-hand side a little bit, so we've got our engine start-stop button. So we are push-button start inside of this trim level of the vehicle, so this version. We've got our trailer backup assist. Now this one is actually slightly different from where it was positioned in the 2020 model year, but one of the nice things about this backup assist is once we've got a trailer connected, rather than counter steering the steering wheel, what we would do is just twist this knob the direction that we want to go, and it'll automatically counter steer the wheel for us. So very, very nice. Moving down, we've got our integrated brake controller, and then we've got a series of different drive modes, which we'll get to in just a second. But firstly, we've got some buttons for our 2 high, 4 high, and our 4 low. Now, if we were in the Lariat, we would also have a 4 auto button, but we're not in the Lariat as of right now, so we don't have that option. Now, as we get into our different drive modes, we've got some options. So we've got our normal, our tow haul, our eco, as well as our sport. Back the other way, we've also got our slippery, deep snow and sand, as well as our mud ruts. So each mode is going to do something a little bit different. So that mud ruts mode is going to lock us into that 4x4. Deep snow and sand is going to disable our traction control and change out the stability control settings as well. So each mode is going to do something slightly differently. And then we've got our 4x4 lock that we can do as well, simply by pressing the button in the middle. So we can lock out our rear differential if we need to. Now taking a peek just at the top of the screen, our auto engine start stop button, so we've got the ability to turn that auto start stop system off. Now what happens is if we turn it off, what's going to happen is if we come to a complete stop, the vehicle might kill power to the engine. If you hate it, you can temporarily disable it, but once we turn the vehicle off and back on again, we need to disable it again. Now, taking a look, we also do have our backup camera, which are hot button press in order to get access to it. If we had the full 360 view, that would also show up by pressing the camera button along the top. Our 4-way blinkers, and then we can also turn the traction control system on or off as well. Now this system is new for the 2021 model year. We've got a beautiful 12-inch screen, which as I mentioned gives us Android Auto and Apple CarPlay, which are wireless. We've got basic audio, we've got our basics for a phone, we've got built-in factory navigation. Our built-in factory navigation is going to be standard. There is the option for connected navigation. Connected navigation, you get a few years of free service, and then it's going to be a paid subscription after that. The big difference between factory navigation and the connected is it's going to give you live traffic alerts and things like that. But as I mentioned, we can connect through Android Auto or Apple CarPlay, so we can use Waze, Google Maps, or Apple Maps directly through the screen, which has all of that functionality as well. We've got the ability to add in a favorite button, some basics for our apps, and then some settings. So we've got our basic sound settings, clock, and things like that. As I mentioned, if you want the fuller walk around of how this system works, check down in the description below for the full walk around of this new Sync 4 system. But some other things in a nutshell, we've got some basic features, driver assistance settings, ton of different options. We've got our auto hold setting, which we can turn on or off, lane keeping system, pre-collision assist, and a number of other things. And then from there, we've also got this little guy. So as we start to press that tab button, we can kind of go up and down. It's a very dynamic press there. We can figure out what's going on. So we press something like zone lighting. We can drag it across onto the main screen as well, and that's going to update things. So we've got our full zone lighting, which is going to give us a full 360 lighting around the outside of the vehicle. We can also toggle on which lights come on as we go. So really, really nice. A few other things to point out. As we look to the right, we've got a little button. We're going to press that in order to get a little storage area. And then moving down, we do have our glove compartment as well. We can lock both of those back into place. And moving down the center stack, so a lot of things to point out here. So we can adjust our volume. Let's actually do a quick audio test.
Sound crazy, but you make me wanna write a song. And it goes like
this Bang & Olufsen sound system is absolutely incredible. I love it. But as we see, we've got a tuning rocker, so this honestly is probably going to be the least effective method of tuning, because yeah, we can kind of adjust it there. We can direct tune along the top, or you can just be simple. You can use your voice in order to change the stations. Let me show you how that works. 97.7.
Tuning to FM 97.7.
So it changes the station for us using our voice. So the tuning rocker, I think, is eventually going to end up going away because we can just use our voice instead. Hot button press in order to get some basic sound settings. We've also got the ability to change out what's going on. So we can change out our radio stations, or our sources, I should say. So AM, FM, Sirius XM, etc. Now, as bright and as beautiful as the screen is, you might find it a little distracting. If you do, we can press that button in either to bring up the clock, or we can turn it off completely with one more press and then bring it back to life again. Moving down a bit more, you can change songs or radio stations, play or pause. We've got some basic climate control settings. As I mentioned, because we're in the 302 version of the vehicle, we also do have heated seats in the front. We've got our rear window defrost and then our basic fan control as well. Now, we do have dual zone climate control inside of this specific vehicle. And again, it is available as an option if you need it. And we can easily toggle the system on or off by pressing the button. And we do have the option of changing this around. So if we want the setting different for the driver passenger side, then we can just reset that in order to bring it back to the driver's default again. We've got a 12 volt port. And moving down, we've also got a traditional wall outlet. So if we need to plug in something, we've got the ability to easily do that. Now, moving down a little bit more, we've got a few USB ports, and we've also got a little phone holder. Now, this is actually pretty nice because we've got Android Auto and Apple CarPlay that are now wireless. We can just slide our phone in there if we need to, and we can connect wirelessly, which is really nice. A little storage cup along the bottom, and we've also got a little bit of storage area along both sides. And from there, we've also got our shifter. So shifter knob, we've got our park reverse neutral drive, and then the manual mode, which is going to give us better control over the gears as we go. So we've got a 10-speed automatic system. We can easily adjust the gears as necessary. Now, this isn't going to be the standard position unless we get the XLT Sport Pack for the shifter knob. Typically, it's going to be up by the steering wheel, but when we get into the Sport Pack, that's when it moves down. Now, we do have a little button along the top, as you can see there, and that's going to be the power folding for this. So you can see power fold up and down. So one of the nice things is that even if you don't get the one with the interior work surface area, we can still fold that down to give ourselves a little bit of an area to still work. Now, when we do look at the console in the middle with the XLT Sport Pack, so you can see there we've got a nice amount of storage space. We've got a few more USB cables, or USB ports down there as well. And we've also got a tray that we can jump up, and we can kind of push that down instead. So we've got a little bit of extra storage space as well. We're just going to click that down to lock it back into place. And we've also got a few more cup holders along the back also. And as we start to move up overhead, auto dimming rear view mirror inside of the 302 version of the vehicle. We've got some basic control lights for our interior lighting. Now, this is for the power sliding rear window. So as you can see there, we've got the power sliding rear window, which is standard inside of the 302 version, and it's optional in the other trim levels of the vehicle, the other option. So in the Lariat and above, it's standard. In the 301 and down, it's going to be available as an option. Now, this one does not have the twin panel sunroof, but our controls up above would be there if we had it. Our sunglasses holder up above it as well. Moving off to the left-hand side, so we do have our visor. We've got our vanity mirror as well. No lights on this one. We've got our business card holder along the top. We can crank this out, and we can also slide it a little bit if we need to block a little bit more sun. Click it in order to lock it back into place. And that's going to be the basics of the interior of the vehicle. Well, folks, that was a quick look at the 2021 Ford F-150 XLT. What did you think? If you have any questions, drop down in the comments section below, and I'm more than willing and welcome to talk you through any issues that you might be having. If you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up, think about sharing it with your social networks, and until I see you next time, make sure you stay safe.